Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something that affects millions of women, particularly those who are dating later in life, returning to the dating scene after divorce, or simply navigating relationships in their mature years. We're discussing the 5 most common tricks used by so-called nice guys and how to protect yourself from manipulation disguised as kindness. But before we dive deep into this critical topic, if you're finding value in this content, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps this video reach more women who need to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our content on relationships, personal growth, and empowerment. And if you really want to support the work we do here, consider leaving a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Share this video with friends who might benefit. And if you're able, support us through super thanks. Your support allows us to continue creating content that makes a real difference in people's lives. Now, let's get into why this topic matters so much, especially for older women. Picture this scenario. You've met someone who seems absolutely perfect. He's attentive. He listens to everything you say. He seems to respect your boundaries, and he presents himself as different from all the other men you've encountered. He calls himself a nice guy. He might even explicitly tell you that he's not like other men, that he truly values women, that he's been hurt before and knows how to treat a lady right. Everything feels comfortable, safe, and promising.
Finally, you think someone who gets it.
Someone who understands what a mature woman wants and needs in a relationship, but then slowly things begin to shift. The man who was so understanding suddenly becomes demanding. The person who respected your independence now questions your every decision. The one who seemed so supportive starts making you feel guilty for having your own life, your own friends, your own boundaries. What happened? How did this seemingly nice guy transform into someone you barely recognize? Here's the truth that might be hard to hear. He didn't transform. The nice guy act was exactly that, an act. A carefully constructed persona designed to gain your trust, lower your defenses, and position himself as the answer to your relationship needs. This isn't about man-hating or cynicism. This is about recognizing patterns of manipulation that specifically target older women who often bring qualities to relationships that manipulators find attractive: life experience, emotional intelligence, financial stability, established homes, and often a desire for companionship after years of independence or previous relationships. The so-called nice guy knows that older women have likely experienced enough of life to see through obvious red flags. So he adapts. He becomes subtler, more patient, more strategic in his approach. He studies what you want and becomes exactly that, until he doesn't need to anymore. Over the next portion of this video, we're going to break down 5 specific tricks that nice guys use, particularly when targeting older women. We'll examine why these tactics work, how to recognize them early, and most importantly, how to protect yourself while still remaining open to genuine connection. This information could save you months or years of emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, or psychological damage. It could be the difference between falling into another disappointing relationship and finding genuine partnership. So stay with me through this entire video, because each trick builds on the last, and understanding all 5 gives you a complete picture of how this manipulation operates. Let's start by understanding what we mean when we talk about the nice guy. We're not talking about genuinely kind, considerate men who treat women with respect. Those men exist and they're wonderful. We're talking about a specific type of manipulator who uses niceness as a tool. As a currency, he expects to be repaid with your time, attention, affection, body, or resources. The nice guy operates from a fundamentally transactional view of relationships. In his mind, if he performs certain behaviors, if he says the right things, if he presents himself the right way, he is entitled to what he wants from you. When you don't provide what he feels entitled to, the mask slips, and you see who he really is. For older women specifically, nice guys often adjust their tactics. They know you've been around long enough to spot certain obvious red flags. You're not likely to fall for the young man's game of overt aggression or obvious love bombing. So the nice guy becomes more sophisticated. He positions himself as emotionally mature. He talks about therapy and personal growth. He discusses his past relationships with what seems like genuine self-reflection. He appears to have done the work that so many men haven't. He seems safe, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Because while genuinely evolved men do exist, the nice guy has learned to mimic the language and behaviors of emotional maturity without actually possessing it. He studied what women say they want and created a convincing performance. The challenge for older women is that life experience can actually work against you in these situations. You've learned to give people the benefit of the doubt. You understand that everyone has flaws and complications. You've developed empathy and the ability to see multiple perspectives. These are beautiful qualities that make you a wonderful partner, but they're also qualities the nice guy will exploit. He counts on your maturity to excuse his inconsistencies. He relies on your empathy to understand his difficulties. He banks on your life experience, making you more forgiving, more patient, more willing to work through problems. What he doesn't count on is you being educated about his tactics. He doesn't expect you to recognize the patterns. He assumes that his performance will be convincing enough, that you'll be so grateful for his apparent niceness, that you won't look deeper. That's where this video comes in. We're going to shine a light on these tactics so that when you encounter them, you'll know exactly what you're dealing with. You'll be able to distinguish between a man who is genuinely working on himself and one who has simply learned to talk the talk. You'll recognize the difference between healthy relationship development and strategic manipulation. Before we get into the specific tricks, I want to acknowledge something important. If you've fallen for these tactics before, you're not foolish. You're not weak. You're not broken or damaged. You're a human being who wanted connection and encountered someone skilled at deception. These men are often very good at what they do because they've practiced on many women before you. The fact that you're watching this video shows you're committed to learning and growing. That's strength, not weakness. So let's get into these 5 tricks with clear eyes and practical knowledge. And remember, if you're getting value from this information, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future content. Drop a comment below if you've experienced any of these tactics. Your story might help another woman recognize what's happening in her own life. And if you can, support the channel through super thanks so we can keep creating this important content. Trick number 1, the wounded healer. The first trick that nice guys use, especially with older women, is positioning themselves as the wounded healer. This is a man who shares his past trauma, his previous heartbreak, or his difficult life experiences in a way that accomplishes several manipulative goals at once. First, it creates instant intimacy. When someone shares vulnerable information with you early in knowing them, it can create a false sense of closeness. You feel special that he's opening up to you. You feel trusted. This premature intimacy bypasses the natural process of getting to know someone gradually and makes you feel more connected than you actually are. Second, it positions him as emotionally evolved. By talking about his pain and what he's learned from it, he appears to be self-aware and growth-oriented. He seems like a man who has done the difficult work of examining his life and emerging stronger. This is incredibly attractive to older women who value emotional intelligence and are tired of emotionally unavailable men. Third, and most insidiously, it preemptively excuses his future bad behavior. When he inevitably does something hurtful, disappointing, or manipulative, he has already established his trauma as a reason. He can point back to those early vulnerable conversations and remind you of how he's been hurt, how he's struggling, how he's trying his best despite his wounds. Let me give you a specific example of how this plays out. Imagine you meet a man who, within the first few dates, shares that his previous partner cheated on him. He talks about how devastating it was, how it shattered his trust, how he's worked hard in therapy to be able to open his heart again. He might even cry as he tells you this story. You, being a compassionate person with life experience, feel for him. You admire his vulnerability. You appreciate that he's being so open with you. You feel protective of his heart and determined to show him that not all women are like his ex. Do you see what just happened? He's set up a dynamic where you're now invested in proving yourself to him. You're already working to demonstrate that you're trustworthy, that you're different, that you won't hurt him. The relationship focus has shifted from whether he's right for you to whether you can heal him and prove yourself worthy of his trust. As the relationship progresses, this pattern continues. When he exhibits jealous behavior, monitoring who you talk to or questioning your friendships, he reminds you of his past betrayal. When he needs constant reassurance, demanding to know where you are and who you're with, it's because of his trauma. When he struggles to commit or pulls away emotionally, he's just protecting himself from being hurt again. You find yourself walking on eggshells, managing his emotions, proving your loyalty, and excusing behavior that you would never accept from someone without this backstory. And if you try to address these issues, he can accuse you of not understanding his pain, of being insensitive to his trauma, of abandoning him when he's vulnerable. The wounded healer is particularly effective on older women for several reasons. First, you've lived long enough to have your own wounds, so you relate to his pain. You understand that past experiences shape us, and you have compassion for his struggle. Second, you likely value emotional vulnerability and see his openness as a positive sign, especially if you've dealt with emotionally closed-off men in the past. Third, you may feel that at your age, everyone comes with baggage, so you're willing to be patient with his healing process. But here's what you need to understand. There is a profound difference between someone who has experienced trauma and is genuinely working on healing, and someone who weaponizes their trauma to manipulate others. A person who is truly healing takes responsibility for managing their own triggers and emotions. They don't make their pain your burden to fix. They don't use their past as an excuse for present bad behavior. They don't share deep trauma prematurely to create false intimacy. A genuinely healing person will have appropriate boundaries around their vulnerability. They'll share their story gradually as trust is naturally built. They'll be seeing a therapist or engaging in actual healing work, not just talking about their trauma. They'll take responsibility when their past hurts cause them to react poorly in the present, and they'll work on it rather than expecting you to accommodate it indefinitely. The wounded healer, by contrast, uses his trauma as a manipulation tool. His sharing is strategic, not spontaneous. His vulnerability is performative, not authentic. And his healing is always just out of reach, keeping you perpetually in the role of caretaker and proving yourself. So how do you spot the difference? Look for these signs. First, does he share trauma very early, before trust is established? Genuine vulnerability develops gradually. Second, does he take responsibility for his healing, or does he make it your job? If you find yourself constantly managing his emotions or walking on eggshells, that's a red flag. Third, does he use his trauma to excuse bad behavior? If every problematic action is explained away by his past, he's manipulating you. Fourth, is he actively engaged in healing work with a professional, or does he just talk about his trauma? Talk is cheap. Actual therapy and growth work is hard. Fifth, does the trauma story seem designed to elicit a specific response from you? If you feel like you're being cast in the role of rescuer or healer, be very careful. Remember, everyone deserves compassion for their pain, but your compassion should never come at the cost of your own well-being, boundaries, or standards. A genuinely good man who has experienced trauma will not want you to sacrifice yourself to accommodate his wounds. He'll want to heal so he can be a good partner to you. The wounded healer is banking on your compassion, your maturity, and your capacity for understanding. Don't let these beautiful qualities be weaponized against you. You can be empathetic while still maintaining boundaries. You can acknowledge someone's pain while refusing to accept bad behavior. You can wish someone well in their healing while recognizing they're not ready for a healthy relationship. If you're currently involved with someone who fits this pattern, ask yourself honestly, is this person actually healing and growing? Or am I being kept in a cycle of caretaking and proving myself? Are my needs being met, or am I so focused on his wounds that my own needs have become secondary? Is the relationship moving toward greater health and stability, or am I stuck in the same patterns month after month? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they're necessary. Your time, energy, and heart are precious. You deserve a partner who has done enough healing work to show up as a whole person, not someone who expects you to be his therapist, mother, and savior. Before we move to the second trick, take a moment to like this video if you're finding it helpful, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Share your thoughts in the comments if you've experienced this wounded healer dynamic, and support the channel with super thanks if you're able. Now let's look at the second trick. Trick number 2, the feminist performance. The second trick employed by nice guys targeting older women is what I call the feminist performance. This is a man who positions himself as unusually enlightened about gender issues, who talks extensively about respecting women, who may even identify as a feminist, and who uses this progressive persona to gain your trust and lower your defenses. This trick is particularly effective with older women who have spent decades dealing with casual sexism, dismissive attitudes from men, and the struggle to be taken seriously in their careers, families, and lives. When you meet a man who seems to actually get it, who talks about the patriarchy, who acknowledges male privilege, who seems to truly respect women as equals, it can feel like you've struck gold. The feminist performance works because it addresses a real hunger that many older women have for being genuinely seen and valued by a male partner. You've spent years having your thoughts interrupted, your expertise questioned, your appearance commented on, and your worth measured by impossible standards. So when a man shows up who seems different, who appears to value you for your mind and your whole personhood, it's incredibly compelling. Let me describe what this looks like in practice. He talks a good game about equality. He tells you he believes in splitting household responsibilities. He says he wants a partner, not someone to take care of him. He discusses toxic masculinity and how he's working to unlearn harmful patterns. He respects when you say no. He asks for consent. He talks about emotional labor and says he doesn't want to burden you with managing his feelings. In the early stages, this seems wonderful. Finally, you think a man who understands. Someone who sees you as a complete human being, not a mommy-girlfriend-maid therapist combination. Someone who values your independence, your career, your interests, your whole life. But here's where the performance reveals itself. Despite all this enlightened talk, you start to notice discrepancies between his words and his actions. He says he believes in equal partnerships, but you're still the one doing the emotional labor in the relationship. He talks about respecting boundaries, but he pushes when you set them. He claims to value your career, but he sulks when you have to work late or travel for business. He says he's a feminist, but he expects you to manage his schedule, remember his appointments, buy gifts for his family, and handle all the invisible work of the relationship. The feminist performance is insidious because it makes you question your own perceptions. He says all the right things, so when you feel uncomfortable or frustrated, you wonder if you're being unfair. After all, he talks about equality and respect. He uses the right language. He can cite statistics about the wage gap and discuss intersectionality. Surely a man this enlightened wouldn't be manipulating you, but manipulation isn't about the words someone uses. It's about the gap between their stated values and their actual behavior. And the nice guy who employs the feminist performance is counting on that gap being hard for you to articulate because his words are so compelling. Let's look at specific examples of how this plays out. He might say he supports your career while subtly undermining it. He praises your work publicly, but questions whether you're taking on too much. He says he's proud of your success, but makes comments about how stressed you are, suggesting you might want to cut back. He agrees with your decision to travel for a business opportunity, but makes you feel guilty about leaving him by talking about how hard it will be for him. Or consider this scenario. He talks about consent and respecting your boundaries, but when you're not in the mood for sex, he makes you feel like you're depriving him. He doesn't force or pressure overtly, but he sighs, looks disappointed, or makes comments about how long it's been. He might even use feminist language, talking about how he has needs too and relationships require compromise. The message is clear. You're being unreasonable or selfish for saying no, despite all his talk about consent. Another common manifestation is the weaponization of emotions. He talks about how men should be allowed to feel and express emotions, which is absolutely true. But then he uses his emotions to control you. He has emotional outbursts that you have to manage. He cries to get his way. He processes his feelings endlessly, expecting you to provide constant support and validation. When you're exhausted by this emotional labor, he accuses you of wanting him to go back to toxic masculine repression. The feminist performance is particularly effective on older women because you've likely spent years hoping men would evolve in exactly this way. You've wanted men to understand gender dynamics, to take responsibility for their role in inequality, to become true partners. So when someone appears to be that evolved man, you're primed to believe it. This trick also exploits generational dynamics. If you're an older woman who grew up in a time when feminism was less mainstream, when discussing these issues wasn't as common, you might feel less equipped to call out someone who uses this language fluently. He can make you feel like you're behind the times, less progressive, even anti-feminist if you question his behavior. So how do you identify the difference between a performative feminist and a man who genuinely lives these values? Here are the key indicators. First, watch what he does, not what he says. A truly egalitarian man's actions align with his words. He doesn't just talk about equal partnership. He actually does his share without being asked or managed. Second, notice who does the invisible labor. Is he tracking when milk needs to be bought, remembering to call his own mother, managing social calendars, noticing when things need to be cleaned? Or does he help when you ask, which means you're still doing the cognitive labor? Third, observe how he handles your success. Does he genuinely celebrate it, or is there a subtle undercurrent of competition or diminishment? Fourth, examine how he responds to your boundaries. Does he respect them immediately, or does he push back, pout, or try to negotiate them? Fifth, consider whether he applies his feminist principles broadly or just when it benefits him. Does he support other women or just you when you're doing what he wants? Pay attention to his relationship with other women too. How does he talk about his mother, his sisters, his female colleagues, his exes? Does he respect women across the board, or only women he's trying to impress? Does he do feminist work in the world, or does he just perform feminism to get dates? A genuinely evolved man doesn't need to constantly announce his enlightenment. He just lives it. He doesn't use feminist language as a tool to gain access to women. He does the work because he believes in it, regardless of who's watching. He doesn't expect credit for basic decency like respecting consent or doing housework. He doesn't weaponize progressive language to win arguments or shut down your legitimate concerns. If you're involved with someone who talks a great feminist game but you're exhausted from doing all the emotional and cognitive labor, something is wrong. If he uses feminist language but you still feel like you're being managed, controlled, or diminished, pay attention to that feeling. If his actions consistently fail to match his progressive words, believe the actions. The feminist performance is one of the more sophisticated manipulation tactics because it requires the nice guy to be relatively educated and aware. He has to know enough about feminism and gender dynamics to sound convincing. This means he's specifically targeting educated, aware women who value these principles. He studied what you care about and learned to mimic it. But here's the good news. The longer a relationship goes on, the harder it is to maintain a performance. Real character emerges over time. If you stay alert and trust your perceptions, you will see the gaps between performance and reality. When you do, trust what you see, not what you're told. Remember, a man who truly respects women doesn't need to constantly tell you about it. His respect is evident in his actions, his consistency, and his genuine partnership. He doesn't use feminism as a pickup line or a defense against criticism. He lives these values because he believes in them, and that belief is obvious in everything he does. If you're finding this information valuable, please like this video and subscribe for more content on relationships and personal growth. Leave a comment sharing your experiences, and if you can, support us through Super Thanks. Your engagement helps us reach more women with this important information. Now let's move to trick number 3. Trick number 3, the patient investor. The third manipulation tactic used by nice guys, particularly effective with older women, is what I call the patient investor strategy. This is a man who plays the long game, investing time and attention up front to position himself for a significant payoff later. He's willing to wait, to seem undemanding, to respect your pace, all while strategically building a foundation for future exploitation. The patient investor understands that older women have defenses. You've been hurt before. You're not going to rush into anything. You have your own life, your own home, your own finances, and your own independence. You're not desperately seeking a relationship. You're open to one that genuinely adds value to your life. The patient investor gets this, and he adapts his approach accordingly. This trick is particularly dangerous because patience is generally a virtue in relationships. Taking time to know someone, allowing feelings to develop naturally, respecting boundaries and pacing. These are all healthy relationship behaviors. The patient investor mimics these healthy behaviors for unhealthy reasons. He's not patient because he respects your needs. He's patient because he's playing a strategic game. Here's how it typically unfolds. When you meet him, he seems refreshingly undemanding. He's not rushing you into anything. He's fine with taking things slow. He respects that you have a busy life with work, friends, hobbies, maybe adult children or grandchildren. He seems content to fit into your life, rather than demanding you reshape your life around him. This is incredibly appealing to older women who have experienced pushy, demanding men who wanted too much too soon. The patient investor seems different. He's respectful of your time. He doesn't get upset when you have other commitments. He encourages you to maintain your friendships and pursue your interests. He seems secure, stable, and undemanding. In the early months, he invests heavily in learning about you. He remembers details about your life. He asks thoughtful questions. He pays attention to your preferences, your patterns, your vulnerabilities. He notes what makes you happy, what concerns you, what you value, what you fear. He's gathering intelligence, though it feels like genuine interest. He's also establishing his value to you. He helps with things around your house. He runs errands for you. He's there when you need support. He listens when you vent about work or family stress. He becomes a reliable presence in your life. Gradually, he makes himself seemingly indispensable. You start to depend on him for practical help, emotional support, and companionship. During this investment phase, he asks for very little. He doesn't pressure you about the relationship status. He's not demanding your time or attention. He seems happy just to be part of your life in whatever way works for you. This low-pressure approach is refreshing and makes you trust him. You let your guard down because he seems so safe, so patient, so respectful. But here's what's actually happening. He's conducting reconnaissance. He's learning your weak points, your resources, your life situation. He's noting whether you own your home, how much money you have, what your retirement looks like, what assets you have. He's observing your relationships with your adult children, whether you have a strong support network, how isolated you might be. He's identifying your insecurities, your desires, your fears, your needs, and he's positioning himself as essential to your life. The help he provides isn't just kindness. It's strategic. By making himself useful, by solving problems, by being reliable, he's creating dependency. You begin to organize your life around his presence. You start to rely on his help. You trust him with access to your home, your personal information, your life. Then, once he's established himself and lowered your defenses, the requests begin. Maybe he needs help with rent because he's between jobs. Perhaps he has a business opportunity that just needs a small investment. His car breaks down and he needs to borrow yours just temporarily. He needs a place to stay for a few weeks while his apartment situation gets sorted out. He has a tax problem or a legal issue that needs some financial assistance. The requests start small and increase over time. And because he's invested months in being helpful and undemanding, you feel obligated to help him now. It seems only fair after everything he's done for you. He frames it as mutual support in a partnership. He reminds you of all the times he was there for you. He may even become hurt or offended if you hesitate, suggesting you don't trust him or don't value the relationship. This is where the patient investor collects on his investment. Everything he did in those early months wasn't about genuine care for you. It was about positioning himself to take from you later. The patience wasn't respect, it was strategy. The helpfulness wasn't generosity, it was down payment on future exploitation. The patient investor is particularly effective with older women for several reasons. First, you likely have more resources than younger women: savings, property, stable income, retirement accounts. You're a better target for financial exploitation. Second, if you've been single for a while, you may feel grateful for companionship and willing to overlook red flags to maintain the relationship. Third, you may feel pressure about your age and believe this is your last chance at partnership, making you vulnerable to manipulation. Fourth, you've learned to value patience and emotional maturity, so his patient approach seems like exactly what you wanted. The patient investor also exploits certain dynamics specific to older women's life situations. If you're widowed, he positions himself as helping you move forward and may even seem to honor your late spouse's memory while gradually taking their place in your life and home. If you're divorced, he presents himself as completely different from your ex, patient where your ex was demanding, helpful where your ex was selfish. If you're living alone for the first time in decades, he makes himself so useful that independent living seems harder without him. Some patient investors are also specifically targeting your assets for later in life. They're thinking about inheritance, about being written into your will, about having claim to your property or savings. They're playing a decades-long game if necessary, especially if you're financially comfortable or own valuable property. So how do you protect yourself from the patient investor while still remaining open to genuine connection? Here are key strategies. First, maintain your independence even as a relationship develops. Don't allow yourself to become dependent on anyone's help, no matter how freely offered. Second, be cautious about mixing finances or providing financial help, especially early on. A genuinely good man won't ask for money in the early stages of a relationship. Third, pay attention to whether his interest in your life seems genuinely about knowing you, or more like he's gathering information. Does he ask intrusive questions about your finances, your assets, your will, your children's inheritance? Fourth, notice if he's isolating you from your support network. The patient investor often subtly works to reduce your connections to others who might warn you about him. Fifth, trust your instincts if something feels off. If you feel like you're being studied or strategically maneuvered, you probably are. Also watch for these specific patterns. Does he volunteer help immediately before you've even asked? Does he insert himself into your life rapidly, taking on tasks and roles without discussion? Does he have access to your home, your finances, your personal information more quickly than the relationship depth would warrant? Is there a discrepancy between how patient and undemanding he is emotionally versus how quickly he's becoming practically entangled in your life? Remember, there's a difference between genuine support in a developing relationship and strategic investment for future exploitation. A genuinely caring partner helps you because they care about you, not because they're positioning themselves to take from you later. Their help doesn't come with strings attached or future obligations. They don't track their generosity and bring it up later as evidence of what you owe them. A healthy relationship develops reciprocally. Sometimes you help them, sometimes they help you. There's natural balance over time. With the patient investor, the early dynamic is all giving from him and receiving from you, which feels great at first, but is actually setting up future exploitation. Once he believes he's invested enough, the extraction phase begins, and you'll find yourself giving far more than you ever received if you're currently involved with someone and you're starting to feel like the dynamic has shifted from him being supportive to him making increasing demands. Trust that perception. If you notice that what seemed like patience now feels like strategy, pay attention. If someone who seemed undemanding is now asking for money, resources, or major life changes from you, consider whether you've been dealing with a patient investor. The good news is that awareness is protection. Once you understand this pattern, you can spot it. You can maintain appropriate boundaries even with someone who seems wonderful. You can protect your resources while still being generous. You can appreciate help without allowing it to become a tool of obligation. You can enjoy companionship without surrendering your independence or your assets. Your resources, your home, your savings, your security, these things are yours. You earned them through decades of work and life. You have every right to protect them. A man who genuinely cares about you will want you to feel secure and protected. He won't pressure you to give him access, money, or control. He'll respect your boundaries and your need to protect yourself and your future. Don't let loneliness, gratitude, or social pressure to be in a relationship make you vulnerable to a patient investor. It's better to be single and secure than partnered and exploited. You deserve genuine companionship, not someone who sees you as a strategic investment opportunity. Before we continue to trick number 4, please take a moment to like this video if you're finding it valuable. Subscribe to the channel for more content on protecting yourself in relationships. Share this video with friends who might need to hear this information. And if you're able, support us through super thanks so we can continue creating this essential content. Now let's examine the 4th manipulation tactic. Trick number 4. The isolation artist. The 4th manipulation tactic we need to discuss is the isolation artist. This is a man who systematically works to distance you from your support network, making you increasingly dependent on him and vulnerable to his control. The isolation artist understands that your friends, family, and independent life are your protection against manipulation. So he works to erode these connections while making it seem like he's simply prioritizing your relationship. This trick is particularly insidious when used against older women because your support networks may already be smaller or more fragmented than they were when you were younger. Friends move away, people pass away, adult children have their own lives, and work relationships end with retirement. The isolation artist exploits these natural life changes to further separate you from remaining connections. The isolation artist doesn't start by overtly demanding you cut people out of your life. That would be an obvious red flag. Instead, he uses subtle, progressive tactics that gradually shift your social world until he's at the center and everyone else is on the periphery. Here's how it typically begins. He's intensely interested in your relationships. He wants to hear all about your friends, your family, your social connections. He asks questions about these people, what they're like, what you talk about, how often you see them. This seems like normal interest in your life, but he's actually gathering information he'll use later. Then come the subtle criticisms. After you spend time with a friend, he makes small negative comments. Your friend seemed a bit negative, didn't she? Your sister sure talks about herself a lot. Your son seems to take you for granted. Your book club friends seem catty. Your tennis partner seems competitive with you. These comments are framed as concern for you, as if he's noticing things that bother you or ways people don't treat you well enough. At first, you might defend your people, but he's persistent with these observations, and eventually you start to wonder if he has a point. You begin seeing your relationships through his critical lens. That friend who vents to you over coffee, is she too negative? The sister who dominates conversation, is she self-centered? The son who's busy with his own family, is he taking you for granted? Seeds of doubt are planted. Simultaneously, the isolation artist creates conflict between you and your support network. He might cause you to be late or cancel plans at the last minute. He creates drama that requires your attention right when you're supposed to meet someone. He gets upset or sulky when you choose to spend time with others. He doesn't forbid you from seeing people, that would be too obvious. But he makes it emotionally exhausting to do so. He also manufactures situations where your people might look bad. He provokes conflicts and then takes offense at how your friends or family react. He shares things you've said in confidence, causing hurt feelings. He misrepresents situations to create misunderstandings. Then he points out how unreasonable or unsupportive these people are being, conveniently ignoring his role in creating the problems. Another tactic is scheduling. He plans things during times you normally see friends or family. He suggests romantic weekend getaways when you usually visit your daughter. He wants to establish new traditions that conflict with your existing plans. When you point this out, he acts hurt that you're choosing others over him. Aren't you supposed to be building a life together? Don't you want to spend time with him? The isolation artist also creates an us versus them dynamic. He talks about how no one really understands your relationship. He suggests that your friends are jealous of your happiness. He implies that your family doesn't want you to move on or find love. He positions himself as the only person who truly gets you, truly values you, truly has your best interests at heart. Everyone else, he suggests, is trying to hold you back or interfere with your happiness. For older women specifically, the isolation artist exploits certain vulnerabilities. If your adult children are protective, he frames their concerns as them trying to control you or not respecting your independence. If your friends express reservations about him, he dismisses it as them being threatened by your new relationship. If you're widowed, he might suggest that your late husband's family or friends are stuck in the past and trying to keep you there. If you're divorced, he claims your friends are projecting their own bitterness onto your situation. He's particularly skilled at weaponizing your desire for privacy and autonomy. When people express concerns, he encourages you not to share details of your relationship with them. It's private between the two of you. Why do they need to know everything? This seems reasonable on the surface. Relationships are private. But it's actually a way to prevent others from seeing the full picture of his manipulation. Over time, you find yourself seeing your support network less and less. When you do connect with them, you withhold information about your relationship. You stop confiding in people. You dismiss their concerns. You choose him over them repeatedly. Your world contracts until it revolves almost entirely around him. This is when you're most vulnerable. Isolated from outside perspectives, you lose the ability to reality test your perceptions. When he tells you something is normal or you're overreacting, you have no one to check with. When he treats you poorly, you have no one to remind you of your worth. When you need support, he's your only option, giving him tremendous power over you. The isolation artist is particularly dangerous for older women living alone. If you don't have daily contact with co-workers or roommates, if your children live far away, if your closest friends have moved or passed away, you may be especially vulnerable to isolation tactics. The isolation artist steps into this gap, becoming your primary social connection, which gives him enormous control. Some isolation artists also manipulate your physical mobility. If you let him take over driving you places, if you make him the one who handles certain tasks, if you become dependent on his help to engage with the world, you lose independence. Combined with social isolation, this creates a situation where leaving becomes extremely difficult, even if you realize you need to. So how do you protect yourself from the isolation artist? First and most importantly, maintain your relationships no matter what. Don't abandon friends or distance yourself from family because a new partner is critical or makes it difficult. These relationships are your lifeline. Second, be extremely wary of anyone who consistently criticizes your support network or creates conflict with them. Third, don't tolerate guilt-tripping about spending time with others. A healthy partner encourages your outside relationships. Fourth, maintain your own schedule and commitments. Don't allow a new relationship to consume all your time and energy. Fifth, keep confidants who know what's really happening in your relationship. Don't hide things because he suggests it should be private. Also watch for these warning signs. Does he seem to cause problems whenever you're about to see certain people? Does he frequently frame things as you choosing others over him? Do your friends and family express concerns about him, especially multiple people independently? Do you find yourself making excuses for his behavior or defending him constantly? Have your social connections diminished significantly since starting this relationship? Are you keeping secrets from people you used to confide in? Do you feel like you have to choose between him and your support network? If you answer yes to several of these questions, you may be dealing with an isolation artist. The solution is to deliberately rebuild your connections. Reach out to people you've distanced from. Be honest about what's been happening. Resist the urge to defend him or minimize the situation. Listen when people who care about you express concerns. Re-engage with your pre-existing life. Hobbies, activities, groups, friendships. A genuinely good partner will actively encourage your outside relationships. He'll be happy when you spend time with friends. He'll facilitate your connection with family. He'll understand that your relationship is enhanced, not threatened, by you having a rich social life. He won't need to be the center of your universe because he's secure in his place in your life. The isolation artist, by contrast, needs you isolated because his manipulation only works when you don't have outside perspectives to counter it. He needs you dependent because he can't compete with genuine care from others. He needs you alone because his behavior doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Remember that maintaining your connections isn't about not prioritizing your relationship. It's about protecting yourself and maintaining the support structure that helps you be healthy and whole. Anyone who truly loves you will want you to have strong connections beyond the relationship. Anyone who isolates you doesn't have your best interest at heart, no matter what they claim. Your relationships with friends and family often span decades. Don't sacrifice them for someone who showed up recently and immediately started driving wedges between you and the people who have been there for you. Trust the people who have proven their care over time, not someone who needs to eliminate your support network to maintain control. If you're finding this information valuable, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if you've experienced isolation tactics in a relationship. Share this video with someone who might need to see it. And support us through super thanks if you can. Now let's discuss the fifth and final trick. Trick number 5, the future faker. The fifth manipulation tactic we need to examine is future faking. This is when a nice guy creates elaborate visions of a wonderful future together, making promises and plans that he has no intention of keeping, all to keep you invested, hopeful, and compliant in the present. Future faking is particularly effective with older women because you're often at a life stage where you're thinking about your later years. You're considering retirement, thinking about where you want to live, imagining what companionship might look like as you age. The future faker taps into these desires and paints exactly the picture you want to see, knowing he never intends to deliver. Here's how future faking typically works. Very early in the relationship, he starts talking about the future. He discusses the trips you'll take together. He describes the house you might share. He talks about growing old together, about being companions for each other through your later years. He makes plans for holidays, for meeting each other's families, for shared experiences down the line. This feels romantic and exciting. Finally, someone who's serious about the future, who's thinking long-term, who's ready for commitment. After perhaps dealing with men who wouldn't commit or who only wanted casual arrangements, this man's enthusiasm about your shared future seems wonderful. But notice what's happening. He's getting you invested in a future that hasn't been earned through present reality. You're bonding to a vision, not to the actual person and relationship as it exists now. You're making decisions based on promised future, not demonstrated current character. The future faker uses these visions strategically. When you're upset about something he's done wrong in the present, he redirects to the future. Remember the trip we're planning? Think about how good life will be when we're retired together. Don't you want the future we've talked about? He uses the dream to smooth over present problems. When you try to address legitimate concerns about the relationship, he accuses you of not believing in your future together. When you want to slow down or establish boundaries, he suggests you're sabotaging the beautiful life you could have. When you question his behavior, he makes it about whether you're committed to the vision he's painted. Let me give you specific examples. He talks about the European vacation you'll take next year, describing every detail, getting you excited about it. But when next year comes, there's always a reason it can't happen. His finances aren't quite ready, or there's a work situation, or family obligations interfere, or the timing isn't right. But don't worry, you'll definitely do it the following year. Except that year brings new excuses, or he discusses moving in together and paints a picture of domestic bliss. He describes how you'll combine your lives, maybe sell one home and live in the other, or find a new place together. He talks about decorating, about routines you'll establish, about the wonderful life you'll share. This keeps you committed to the relationship, but there's always a reason the move can't happen yet. His lease isn't up, or he needs to sort out some financial issues, or it's not the right time to sell. The moving in date keeps getting pushed back, but the vision remains vivid, keeping you hooked. Perhaps he talks about marriage, maybe even proposes. He plans the wedding, discusses the ceremony and honeymoon, makes you feel secure in the commitment. But the actual wedding never happens. There's always a reason to postpone: financial concerns, family drama, timing issues. Or maybe he proposes and unproposes repeatedly, using the on-again, off-again engagement to keep you on an emotional roller coaster. The future faker might also make promises about changing behavior. He acknowledges problems but says they're temporary. Once certain stresses are resolved, once he gets through this rough patch, once some external circumstance changes, everything will be different. He'll be the partner he knows you need. The future version of him, he promises, will be so much better. Just be patient with the present version. For older women, future faking often involves retirement scenarios. He paints pictures of your golden years together. You'll travel, you'll downsize to a charming place, you'll enjoy hobbies together, you'll be companions through aging. This is deeply compelling if you're facing later years alone or worried about aging without partnership. He might also future fake around practical matters. He'll contribute financially once certain things settle. He'll get a better job soon. He'll resolve his debt. He'll move out of his current situation. He'll finalize his divorce. He'll work on his issues. The promises are always about the future, not the present, which means they never have to be fulfilled. Some future fakers are also planning their access to your resources later in life. They talk about being there for you as you age, taking care of you if you need help, being your partner through health challenges. This creates obligation and makes you feel like you owe them access to your life, your home, your finances now, based on promised future care that may never materialize. The insidious thing about future faking is that it keeps you perpetually waiting. You're always living for tomorrow with him, never fully in today. You tolerate present problems because you believe in the promised future. You invest time, energy, emotion, maybe money in a vision that exists only in conversation. Years can pass this way. You realize you've been hearing about the same plans, the same promises, the same future for months or years, but nothing has actually moved forward. When you point this out, he has explanations. Life got in the way, circumstances weren't right, external factors interfered. But the vision remains unchanged, still perfect and shining, still just out of reach. The future faker uses your hope against you. He understands that older women may feel time pressure about finding partnership. He exploits your desire for companionship in later years. He plays on potential fears about aging alone. He offers exactly the future you want, knowing that the vision will keep you committed even when present reality is disappointing or harmful. So how do you protect yourself from future faking? First, focus on present reality, not future promises. Judge the relationship by what's happening now, not what might happen eventually. Second, be wary of elaborate future planning early in a relationship. Genuine futures develop gradually as a relationship proves itself over time. Third, notice if plans never materialize. Once is circumstance, twice is bad luck, 3 or more times is a pattern. Fourth, pay attention to whether he uses future visions to deflect from present problems. Fifth, don't make major life decisions based on promises. Make decisions based on demonstrated reality. Ask yourself these questions. Does he talk more about the future than he shows up in the present? Are his actions consistent with his stated plans? Do timelines keep shifting? Does he use future promises to avoid accountability for current behavior? Are you staying in a problematic relationship because of what it might become rather than what it is? A genuinely committed partner makes reasonable plans, but lives in the present. They show their commitment through current actions, not just future promises. They understand that trust is built through consistency over time, not through vivid descriptions of potential futures. They don't need to constantly sell you on tomorrow because they're showing up appropriately today. When someone is genuinely building a future with you, you see progress. Plans gradually materialize. Commitment deepens through action, not just words. You feel secure in the present relationship, not just hopeful about a future one. The future faker, by contrast, is all talk. The visions are detailed and compelling, but they never come to fruition. Nothing actually moves forward. You're kept in a holding pattern, always believing you're on the verge of the life he's described, never quite getting there. If you're currently involved with a future faker, do a reality check. What has this person actually delivered versus what they've promised? What does the relationship look like now versus how they describe what it will become? Are you staying because of present reality or future fantasy? How long have you been waiting for promises to be fulfilled? Your time is precious. Years invested in waiting for someone to finally deliver on their promises are years you can't get back. You deserve a partner who shows up in the present, not one who constantly deflects to a future that never arrives. Don't let beautiful visions of tomorrow blind you to disappointing realities of today. Don't sacrifice your present for someone else's empty promises. And don't stay in a relationship that exists more in imagination than in reality. A life built on hope for a future that never comes is a stolen life. You deserve better than that. You deserve someone whose actions match their words, whose commitment is demonstrated daily, whose present behavior reflects the future they describe. Before we move to the conclusion, please like this video if you found it helpful. Subscribe for more content on navigating relationships wisely. Comment below if you've experienced future faking. Your story might help another woman recognize what's happening in her own life. And support the channel through super thanks if you're able. Now let's wrap up everything we've discussed. We've covered 5 major manipulation tactics used by so-called nice guys who target older women. Let's quickly review them so you have a complete picture of how these tactics work together. The wounded healer uses trauma and vulnerability to create premature intimacy and excuse bad behavior. He makes you feel special for being trusted with his pain while positioning you as his healer and creating obligation to accommodate his wounds. The feminist performance involves using progressive language and appearing enlightened about gender issues while failing to live these values. He talks a great game about equality and respect, but expects you to do all the emotional labor and accommodate his needs. The patient investor plays the long game, seeming undemanding while strategically positioning himself to take from you later. He invests time and helpfulness up front to create obligation and dependency, then collects on that investment through financial or practical exploitation. The isolation artist systematically separates you from your support network, making you dependent on him alone. He criticizes your relationships, creates conflicts, and gradually erodes your connections until you're isolated and vulnerable. The future faker paints elaborate visions of a wonderful future that never materializes, keeping you invested in promises rather than present reality. He uses hope and fantasy to keep you committed despite current problems. Now here's what's really important to understand. These tactics rarely occur in isolation. A manipulative man often uses several or all of these tactics in combination. He might be a wounded healer who also performs feminism and future fakes. He might be a patient investor who isolates you while painting future visions. The tactics work together, reinforcing each other, making the manipulation more effective. He might share his trauma to create instant intimacy, use feminist language to seem safe, patiently wait while gathering intelligence about your resources, subtly isolate you from people who might warn you, and keep you hooked with promises of a beautiful future. Before you know it, you're deeply entangled with someone who's systematically manipulating you from multiple angles. This is why recognizing these patterns is so important. Once you understand the tactics, you can see them more clearly. You can identify when someone's patience is actually strategy, when vulnerability is weaponized, when progressive language masks regressive behavior, when helpfulness is a down payment on future exploitation, when isolation is being disguised as intimacy, when promises substitute for presence. But recognizing these tactics is only valuable if you act on that recognition. This is where many women struggle, especially older women who have been socialized to give people the benefit of the doubt, to be understanding, to work on relationships, to be patient with people's flaws. Here's what you need to hear. You are not obligated to stay with someone who manipulates you, no matter how much time you've invested, how much they claim to need you, how good the relationship sometimes is, or how much you've shared. You are not responsible for fixing, healing, or saving anyone. You are not required to sacrifice your well-being, your resources, your peace, or your independence for someone else's benefit. You deserve a relationship where you're genuinely valued, not strategically manipulated. You deserve a partner whose actions match their words. You deserve someone who shows up consistently in the present, not someone who keeps you hooked with future fantasies. You deserve to maintain your support network, your independence, your boundaries, and your resources. If you're currently in a relationship with someone who uses these tactics, you have options. You can leave. I know that feels hard or impossible, especially if he's successfully isolated you or convinced you that you need him, but you can leave. You were whole before him and you'll be whole after him. You survived decades before this relationship, and you'll survive after it. You can also set firm boundaries if you're not ready to leave. Stop tolerating behavior that doesn't serve you. Stop accepting excuses. Stop waiting for promises to materialize. Stop managing his emotions. Stop sacrificing your relationships and independence. Hold him accountable for his actions, not his words. Judge him by what he does, not what he says he'll do. Be prepared for his response when you set boundaries or try to leave. Manipulative men often escalate when they feel control slipping. He might become more charming, promising to change, insisting he'll go to therapy, temporarily improving his behavior. This is called hoovering, trying to suck you back in. Or he might become angry, punishing, guilt-tripping, or threatening. This is showing you who he really is. Whatever his response, stay strong. Reach out to your support network. Even if you've distanced from them, real friends and family will be there for you. Consider working with a therapist who understands manipulation and emotional abuse. Document concerning behavior. Protect your finances and assets. Make a safety plan if you're concerned about his reaction to your leaving. For women who aren't currently in these situations but want to protect themselves, here's my advice. First, take relationships slowly. Don't rush into intimacy, cohabitation, or financial entanglement. Time reveals character. Second, maintain your independence no matter how good a relationship seems. Keep your own finances, your own home if possible, your own friends, your own life. Third, trust your instincts. If something feels off, pay attention to that feeling. Your intuition is based on your brain processing subtle cues that something is wrong. Fourth, ensure multiple people in your life know what's happening in your relationship. Don't isolate or keep secrets. Fifth, judge people by their consistent actions over time, not their words or occasional good behavior. Also, work on yourself. Understand your vulnerabilities. If you're lonely, work on building meaningful connections that don't involve romantic relationships. If you're financially insecure, work on creating stability that doesn't depend on a partner. If you're seeking validation through relationships, work on building self-worth from within. If you're afraid of aging alone, work on creating a rich, full life that isn't centered on having a partner. The stronger you are independently, emotionally, financially, socially, the less vulnerable you are to these manipulation tactics. Manipulators seek out vulnerability. They look for needs they can position themselves to fill. The more whole and complete you are on your own, the harder it is for them to exploit you. This doesn't mean closing yourself off from love or connection. It means approaching relationships from a place of strength rather than need. It means choosing partnership because it adds value to your already good life, not because you need someone to rescue you or complete you. Remember that being single is not a failure or a tragedy. Being single is infinitely better than being in a manipulative, exploitative, or harmful relationship. Don't let societal pressure, family expectations, or fear of being alone push you into accepting less than you deserve. You've lived decades. You've survived challenges. You've built a life. You have value and worth that's independent of being partnered. Don't let anyone make you feel like you need to accept poor treatment because of your age or relationship status. You deserve genuine respect, honest communication, consistent behavior, and authentic love just as much now as you did at any other point in your life. To the women watching this who have experienced these manipulation tactics, I want you to know, it wasn't your fault.
You're not foolish for trusting someone.
You're not weak for wanting connection. You're not broken for having been manipulated. These men are skilled at what they do. They've practiced on many women. They know how to identify vulnerabilities and exploit them. Being targeted by a manipulator doesn't say anything negative about you. It says everything about them. Learn from the experience. Understand the red flags and tactics so you can spot them earlier in the future. But don't blame yourself for being human, for wanting love, for trusting someone who presented themselves as trustworthy. That's not a character flaw. That's being a normal person who deserves love and happened to encounter someone who abused that openness. Your best years are not behind you. Your value doesn't decrease with age. Your capacity for love and joy doesn't expire. You have so much living left to do, and you deserve to do it on your terms. Surrounded by people who genuinely care about you, free from manipulation and exploitation. Whether you're currently dealing with a nice guy manipulator, recovering from a past relationship with one, or hoping to avoid them in the future, I hope this video has given you valuable tools and perspective.
Share this information with other women.
We protect each other by sharing knowledge about these tactics. And please engage with this video. Hit that like button if you found this information valuable. It helps us reach more women who need to see this content. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos on relationships, personal empowerment, and navigating life's challenges. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, your experiences, or your questions. Your engagement helps build a community of women supporting each other. Share this video with friends, daughters, sisters, any woman in your life who might benefit from understanding these manipulation tactics. If you're able and this content has helped you, please consider supporting the channel through Super Thanks. Your financial support allows us to keep creating in-depth, valuable content that makes a real difference in people's lives. We don't take advertising deals or sponsorships that compromise our message, so viewer support is what makes this work possible. Every contribution, no matter the size, helps us continue this important work. Remember, knowledge is power. Understanding these manipulation tactics gives you power to protect yourself, to make informed decisions, to spot red flags early, and to demand the respect and genuine care you deserve. You are worthy of a relationship where you're valued for who you are, where your needs matter, where your boundaries are respected, and where someone shows up consistently with actions that match their words. Don't settle for manipulation disguised as love. Don't accept exploitation dressed up as partnership. Don't tolerate someone slowly taking over your life while pretending to enhance it. You deserve better, and better is possible. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself. Trust yourself. Protect yourself. And never forget that you are valuable, worthy, and deserving of genuine love and respect, exactly as you are right now.
Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and stay true to yourself.